So we're going to take a look at Sculpt Mode, and there's a couple of things that we're going to be doing in this project. The first thing we're going to do is we are actually going to start with a cube instead of a UV sphere for our head. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our cube, and I'm going to go right into edit mode, and I'm going to right click and say subdivide. And notice that doesn't really give us the round shape for a head that we really want. But we could go down here. Notice that there's a subdivide options menu here. And I am going to increase the smoothness of the subdivide all the way to 1. And notice that we do get that smooth shape now. And even though we could do this directly with a multi-resolution operator, there's really not a good reason to start with just a basic cube for a head. This is about as low of a resolution that we would ever want to do for a head. And so I think that's a great place to start, is right here. Now, once we have that set up, then our next step is to actually start working on the head and going into sculpt mode. Now, to do that, I think our next step will be to actually add the modifier for multi-resolution. That way, as we're working on this, we can go back and forth between different resolutions of the mesh. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to add a multi-resolution modifier. Notice nothing has changed. This doesn't actually change the mesh directly. You need to tell it that you want to have more resolution in your mesh. So we need to go over here and hit subdivide. Notice when I hit subdivide once, now I have more points to play around with. And I could hit subdivide again. Now I have more points again. And we could repeat this a couple of times. Now this is way more points than you'd ever really want to work with when you're defining the general shape of your mesh. So what we were going to want to do when we go into sculpt mode is drop that resolution back down. But for now, notice we've got this nice smooth shape, and I can right click on it and say shade smooth, and now it's even smoother. And we kind of have a basic head shape here. Now, when you're working in sculpt mode, you need to keep in mind that it's going to, by default, want to mirror things on the x-axis. So this would be like the front of your face, or this would be the front of your face, not here or here, because it's going to mirror across. This is like your ears. And so let's actually switch over to sculpt mode now so you can see how that works out. So if I switch over to sculpt mode, notice I have a brush here, and I'm actually going to go up to the top and I'm going to say view tool settings. I just like to see these settings right here. You can actually see them over here as well, but I just like being able to see all of the settings like add, subtract, mirroring, all that kind of stuff right up there. It just is good information. I like seeing that up there. But you can also see the same stuff over here. So I can zoom out, and I'm not going to mess with this mesh at this resolution yet. I'm actually going to go back to the modifier. I'm going to go to the sculpt mode part of this, and I'm going to drop this down until we're almost at the bottom. Now notice that when I'm in smooth shading mode, it's a little hard to see where everything is. And so if you want to change that back, you can, but you're going to have to go back into object mode, right click, shade flat. Now we can go back to sculpt mode. Notice I can see the faces a little bit easier. Once again, along the x-axis is where it's going to mirror by default. So this would be like my nose right here. And so if I want to pull the nose out, I can do that. If I wanted to make some horns, I can start pulling on those. I can increase the strength of my brush if I wanted to. Notice that's a lot stronger. But be careful about that. I think at the moment that we're good. I wouldn't necessarily change the radius of the brush because you can zoom in and out to change its effective radius. So let's go and bump up the resolution. So I'm going to bump up the resolution one time. Notice that I lost some detail. So I'm going to need to come in here and start pulling on these horns again. Now the tool that I'm using is not the best for horns. There are other tools here. Notice that there's snake hook and there's thumb and there's grab. And I think grab is probably the best one for what I'm trying to do. So if I grab onto that and just pull on it, notice that I get, those are a little bit better for horns or sharp ears, whatever I want them to be. I can do the same thing for the nose, but the problem is it's going to make a really sharp nose if I do that. So I have to be real careful about that. Um, Once I am happy with the overall shape, then I can go up one more level of resolution. Notice things kind of got blown out of proportion, and that's something you got to get used to. As you change resolutions, you're going to have to be kind of mixing and fixing things out. And I'm going to go over here to the smooth tool and smooth out those sharp edges right there. Okay, notice it's mirroring in the X direction automatically. I'm just going to mirror, I'm going to smooth those out. Okay, and I'm okay with that now. I'm not okay with that though. And so I'll just mess around with that a little bit. Okay. I think I'm okay with that nose except for the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. And once I'm ready to add some more details, then bump up to the next level of resolution. And notice that we're going to have to keep refining the shape on this head or on these horns here, because as I get more points, they're going to try to figure out where they need to be at, and so then I need to tell Blender exactly where I want them to be. And looks like I'm about ready to do some subtraction. So I'm going to go to my draw tool again. I'm going to change over to subtract mode, and then I can start making some cavities for eyes here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit for this so I have less impact. Notice that when I'm zoomed in, it doesn't quite dig quite as deep as it did with the eyes. And I'm going to zoom in even more to get the edges here. I get less impact when I'm zoomed in. And then I can go back to plus and maybe make a lower lip here. I want to make a pronounced lower lip. So I might want to zoom out a little bit for this one if it's going to be really pronounced. That is a very pronounced lower lip. So you're going to keep this process. I'm going to bump up another level of resolution. I'm going to go in with my smooth, and anything that needs to be smoothed out, I'll do that. At this point, I can start smoothing these creases. And yeah, I can just keep working on it until it's the shape I want it to be. Obviously, I'm not putting a lot of attention to detail in here right now because I'm just demonstrating, but you can kind of get the idea what's going on here. Oh, that lower lip is horrible. There we go. Okay, so once you're happy with the shape of your creation, well, then you have a head, and you can go back to object mode and turn on smooth shading just to see what it looks like. Obviously I did this really fast, but you get the gist of it, and then I could render it to see what it really looks like under lighting.